On this episode of How to Make Dinner, I'm making dessert. I don't know about you, but I often like a little something sweet in the evening. Usually I just reach for a little square of dark chocolate or something like that that's really easy, but sometimes I want a little something more. I want like an actual dessert. And I definitely don't want to go to the store, and I definitely don't want to make too many dirty dishes. So today I'm going to show you 5 easy pantry desserts that you can whip up in no time and satisfy that dessert need. First up is one of my childhood favorites. My brother and I used to have this when there was very little in the cupboards, and it was just an easy dessert that we could rely on any old time. So all it is a piece of bread. Drop that in the toaster. I'm lucky enough to have raisin bread this time, which is extra special. And give that a nice slathering of butter and a good sprinkling of brown sugar. I've got nice dark brown sugar here, and just a little sprinkle of cinnamon on top. And that is just the perfect thing for dessert in a pinch. I know it's the simplest thing ever, but it's just a good reminder that this is probably already in your house and you can make it anytime you want. The second one is rice pudding. This is one of those desserts that I like to pull out of my back pocket when there's just a little bit of rice left over. It's not really enough to put away, and it's just enough to make a nice little dessert out of. So this is jasmine rice. I think I had cooked it earlier and it was just left over after dinner. And there's just shy of a cup in this pot. So I basically just use the ratio of equal parts rice to equal parts some kind of milk or milk-like substitute. So this is soy milk today. The amount of sugar you add is very personal. I think for a cup of rice, it's best to start with about 2 tablespoons of sugar and then go from there. And you can use any kind of sweetener you want. So it's sugar, honey, maple syrup. In this case, I'm using brown sugar, and I used a little bit too much when I got a little overzealous on it. But I think 2 tablespoons per cup-ish of rice is a good starting point, and you can always add more. And then from there, I added the rind of an orange just to give it a little bit of a perfume. And then get that onto the stove. Bring it to a boil, keep it moving, especially at the beginning to get all that stuck rice from off the edges of the pot. And then once it's been brought to a boil, I just reduce the heat down to low, simmer it for about 5 minutes, and then turn it off completely and just walk away for about 15-20 minutes. And the rice will just kind of continue to absorb the sweet, milky mixture. And then after about 15-20 minutes, it's just nice and it's still warm and everything's kind of absorbed. Just give it a really good stir. And then because I had orange zest in this one, I decided to slice some of the oranges on top. This is a blood orange. And this is such a nice dessert, and it's always available. I mean, leftover rice is a common thing at my house. I don't know about you. The next pantry dessert was a little bit of an adventure for me. So it's a mug cake. And I think that there are some mixed feelings about mug cakes out in the world. I think a lot of people kind of have a little bit of a hate on for mug cakes. I think they're pretty fun, actually. Like, what's wrong with putting a bunch of ingredients into a mug and cooking it for like, a minute and a half and having this instant cake? I think it's kind of cool. I don't make them very often, and there are admittedly a lot of really bad mug cake recipes out there, but I found one chocolate mug cake recipe that I think is really, really good. It's from a blog called Live Well, Bake Often, and I'll link the recipe down below. The reason I say this one was a little bit of an adventure is because I messed it up like 3 times before I got it right. You first mix the dry ingredients. So it's flour, cocoa powder, baking powder, salt, sugar. Whisk that together till all of the clumps of cocoa powder are, busted up. And then into that goes some milk of your choice. I used soy milk again, and some kind of neutral oil. And then mix that all together, throw in a few chocolate chips for some extra chocolatiness, and then just transfer that into a very well-greased mug. The instructions said to microwave for 60 to 90 seconds. The first time I did it for 60 seconds and it seemed like it was really set when I checked it with a skewer. But when I dumped it out onto a plate, it was clearly not cooked. There was a lot of uncooked batter kind of like glooping around the edges. So I decided to make it again. I did everything the same way. I microwaved it for about 30 seconds longer, so 90 seconds. Took it out, tried to dump it onto a plate, and it fell apart because it was all stuck to the bottom. I guess maybe I didn't grease the bottom of the mug very well. Also, realizing at this point, it's probably better to just eat it straight out of the mug. Like, why am I trying to be a hero here and transfer it onto a plate? But at this point, I was determined to get it perfect. The third time I made it, I thought, I've made this twice already. I know the ingredients off by heart. I don't have to read the recipe. So away I go, putting all the ingredients together, whisking it up, get it into the mug, get it into the microwave. And then when I pulled it out, it looked a little off. And I realized in that moment, sugar. I forgot the sugar. So this is 3 mug cakes down, still haven't mastered it. So I decided to make it yet again. This time I included the sugar. I really greased the heck out of the mug. I got it in for 90 seconds, and after it came out, I let it rest in the mug for like a good 3 to 5 minutes, just to make sure that everything kind of, you know, set nicely together. And then I dumped it out of the mug, and it was perfect. This thing is so good. Of course it looks kind of ugly because it's just like chocolate blob out of a mug, but dust a little icing sugar on it and it looks like $1,000,000. And it tastes like $1,000,000. It's so good. I mean, I'm a fan. I'm a big fan of that one. Here, I'll show you. Here's the winning mug cake that you probably can't see. Yeah, there it is. Oh yeah. And this has now been a couple hours, and I'm gonna just see if it's still good. It's so good. Crepes are one of the fastest, easiest things that you can possibly whip together, and you do not need to make a big old batch of them. So for this recipe, all I did was take 1 egg in a small measuring cup, and I added in about the same volume of milk, so it was about 50 mils, and about the same volume of flour, and then whisk that together really well. Put about a teaspoon of sugar in. It does tend to get a little bit lumpy, so if you want to be extra smooth about it, you can pass it through a little sieve, or you can use an immersion blender to mix it. And crepe batter is always best when it rests, so even if you're making this little small amount, if you can walk away for 10 minutes or something to let the batter rest, that's really beneficial. It'll make the crepe a lot more tender. This amount of batter makes 2 crepes, so that's perfect for 2 people or 1 person if you want to just maybe save the second one for breakfast the next morning. A lot of crepe batter uses butter or fat in the batter itself. I left it out of this one, and I instead just used lots of butter in the pan. And the first one, you know, it's the same with pancakes of any kind. It's always a bit of a dud. This one was no different. The first one was a dud. Still tastes great, just a little bit ugly. But the second one I made was lovely. So I cooked it on one side till it started to get a little bit crispy. I like to have the pan on kind of like almost max, like, you know, 8 or 9. And then flip it over, get it out onto a plate. And my favorite thing to put on crepes, above all other things, like Nutella, bananas, you know, like caramel sauce, all of that is great. But my favorite thing is a little sprinkle of icing sugar and a big squeeze of lemon. We had that I was in French immersion in school, and we had Carnival every year, and we ate crepes with lemon and sugar that way, and it was so good. And every time I taste that combination of flavors, I just go straight back to elementary school. And then because I wanted to be a little bit snazzy about it, I decided to slice up a nice fresh strawberry on top. And this is such a nice dessert. It's a great breakfast too. It's a great snack. Love it. Big fan. This one has become my evening ritual. I can't take credit for it. The idea actually came from a woman named Tony, who is actually the owner and inventor of Abigo beeswax wraps. I was lucky enough to be at a dinner event, and we were sitting across from each other talking about things that we like to snack on in the evenings, and she said, frozen cherries with almond milk. And I'm like, oh, really? I was intrigued, so after the dinner party, I bought a bag of frozen cherries on my way home, and I went home and I made it, and it was really nice. So here's how I do it. It's just frozen cherries, straight out of the bag, a whole pile of them, and then a little bit of a milk of your choice. I'm using soy, and this is unsweetened. And it's just enough to kind of come up, not quite covering the cherries, but just come up a little bit on the sides. And then a little drizzle of maple syrup. And then I'm just gonna dig in. What I love so much about this cherry thing is that the cherries kind of start to defrost and the milk around them starts to get a little bit frozen. So there's this like icy crust on the cherries. And the first one that you eat will be really quite frozen, but then after like 5 or 6 of them, they start to defrost a little bit because you're kind of just eating them slowly. And then the last cherry is like almost fully defrosted and just really, really juicy. And then you get a little bit of the soy milk with every bite. So it's kind of like cherry cereal in a little bit. So good. That's it for my pantry desserts. I hope that this gave you some good ideas for satisfying that evening sweet tooth. And thanks so much for tuning in, and thanks for coming back week after week. It really means so much to me, and I look forward to seeing you next time.